When the fighting ceased and the Zulus scattered into the long grass and bush beyond the plain, a strange silence fell over the field. The square still stood intact, its four faces blackened with powder smoke, but outside lay heaps of fallen warriors, their ochre-stained bodies mingled with shields and assegais. The dry winter grass had been set alight by our shells and rockets, and the wind drove the flames across the battlefield, consuming the dead and wounded alike. We rode out cautiously beyond the laager. The spectacle was dreadful. Hundreds of Zulus lay dead or dying within a few yards of our lines. Many had fallen while trying to reach the camp or force an entry. Others were shot as they turned to flee. Some still clutched their weapons, their hands stiff in death. Not a few writhed in their last agony, crying out for water. Our native auxiliaries were sent among them to collect assegais and rifles, but the heat from the grass fires made it almost impossible to go far. Beyond the kraal of Ulundi itself, the destruction was even greater. The huts were aflame, their thatched roofs collapsing with a roar. Zulu women and children were seen fleeing into the bush, driving small herds of cattle ahead of them. We captured many head of cattle and a considerable quantity of arms, but the king himself had vanished into the hills. The smell of blood and burning grass was everywhere. Even the most hardened of us could not help but be struck by the terrible completeness of the slaughter. The Zulu army, which had advanced so bravely upon us at dawn, was gone, scattered and broken. Some of our men spoke quietly of Isandlwana and said that this day had avenged it at last. Yet there was no cheer, no exultation, only a grim sense that a nation had been broken before our eyes.
The fight ended as quickly as it began. When the last Zulu charge faltered and broke, we watched them run off into the tall grass beyond the river. Then there came a lull, as if the whole plain was holding its breath. We were ordered to advance in skirmishing order to clear the field and drive in any stragglers. What we found is something I will never forget. The Zulu dead lay in rows as if they had been mown down. Some were killed outright. Others lay with fearful wounds. Everywhere were shields, assegais, rifles, and scraps of the red and white headdress the warriors had worn into the charge. The grass fires lit by our shells had spread wide and were now creeping through the bodies, so that many a wounded man met his end in smoke and flame. We could do little to help. Even our own surgeons turned away in horror. Ulundi itself was a site of complete ruin. The great kraal, thousands of huts, was alight, the flames leaping high into the winter sky. The air was full of the smell of burning thatch, cattle dung, and blood. Zulu women and children were fleeing in all directions, some dragging mats and cooking pots, others driving cattle, many simply running with nothing but the clothes on their backs. We captured hundreds of cattle and stacks of assegais, but saw no sign of the king. I had fought at Kambula and Kambula Drift, but nothing in this war had struck me like the field at Ulundi. It was victory, but it was also a slaughter. We all remembered Isandlwana and the men lost there, yet when I looked across the plain and saw the bodies of so many warriors, proud men only hours before, it did not feel like revenge. It felt like an ending. The Zulu nation, as we had known it, lay broken before us.
It was about midday when I rode with the staff across the field towards the royal kraal. The last shots had been fired some time before. The vast Zulu army had vanished into the bush, leaving its dead in heaps upon the plain. All around the square the bodies lay thick, in ranks as they had advanced, their assegais fallen from nerveless hands. The long grass was burning in many places, and from time to time a sudden rush of flame swept over a group of the fallen, so that we were compelled to check our horses and skirt the fires. The scene within Ulundi itself was still more striking. The kraal, one of the largest native towns in Africa, was wrapped in flame. The high thatched roofs of the royal huts blazed fiercely, and the wind carried showers of sparks high into the pale blue sky. We found the great cattle pens empty save for a few dead beasts. The king's hut had been stripped and abandoned. Not a living soul remained within the palisade. Only the occasional cry of a vulture circling overhead broke the stillness. Our soldiers moved about among the ruins, collecting assegais, picking over the spoils, or staring at the spectacle. Even the most hardened campaigners were subdued. There was no cheer for victory, no sign of elation, only the knowledge that the power of the Zulu monarchy had been broken in a single hour. I have seen battlefields in Europe, but none left so profound an impression of destruction as Ulundi. It was as though a nation had been annihilated before our eyes.
When the sun rose that morning, our hearts were strong. We had assembled in thousands to defend Ulundi, the heart of the king. The white men's square stood on the plain like a great wagon, its horns all around. We rushed at it again and again, but their fire tore us apart. We had never seen such weapons. The air was full of thunder and smoke, and the ground shook beneath our feet. At last we could go no further. Our brothers were falling all around. We tried to drag away the wounded, but the fire was too great. There the grass caught alight. The flames came running like dogs over the plain, and the wounded cried out as the fire reached them. Those who could still walk fled into the valleys beyond the river. I threw away my shield and ran with nothing but my spear. From the hills, I looked back and saw Ulundi burning, the great huts of the king where we had been called to council and pray singing, were black with smoke and leaping flames. The cattle bellowed and scattered. Women and children ran into the bush with nothing but their mats. The smell of burning thatch, flesh, and powder drifted up to us. Our people were scattered like beads from our broken string. We had lost everything, the king's home, the cattle, our weapons, and so many of our bravest men. It was the end. We had fought as our fathers fought, but the white man's thunder was too strong. Ulundi was gone, and with it the greatness of the Zulu nation.